Hello lovely people, hope you're doing all kinds of well. I wanted to share with you some of the books I'm thinking about reading for the month of August, which is Women in Translation Month. It's a month that I really enjoy every year. I really like picking up books by women that have been translated. I most years have read solely in English. This year I'm going to try and read some in Icelandic as well, because I'm learning Icelandic if you didn't know. I live in Iceland and I've been learning Icelandic for about 2 years now. And I start at the university to study Icelandic this autumn, so I'm hoping this is going to give me a wee head start on my studies, but also it's just good practice, to be exposed to new words and stuff like that. So my plan today is just to run you through what books I have on my TBR. It's mostly just books that I actually own. I think I took a couple out of the library because I wanted to have some quick wins with the Icelandic reading, but I have some bigger, chunkier books as well. So let's just see how we go. I've got quite a lot in English as well, which is the language that I would usually read in. So I'm not sure where to start, but I might just start with the English ones. I've got Saha 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 by Cho Nam-ju, translated by Jamie Chang. This is somewhat sci-fi, somewhat mystery, somewhat thriller-esque, I think. The last book I read from this author was King Jae-young, born 1982. Yeah. But this one's very different from that. It says, in a country called Town, Sue is found dead in an abandoned car. The suspected killer is presumed to come from the Saha Estates. And it basically follows the life of the Saha Estates, who lives there, the two, I think it's brother and sister. It starts off with kind of a brutal scene and you're right into the action immediately, which I wasn't expecting. I gave it a one chapter thing to see how it got, and I just wasn't quite in the mood for it the other night. But I'm definitely going to come back to it, and I would love to read it this month because it's just come out, I think. As I understand it just came out. So very much excited for this one. I also have what is one of quite a few short story collections. I have Here Be Icebergs by Katia Adui, and it's translated by Rosalind Harvey. This is about families and kinship, families born into and families made, take disconcerting and familiar shapes in these refreshingly frank short stories. I wanted to try some more charcoal press books, I think, and that's where this one came from, why I picked this one up in the end. I also just really like reading short stories, and sometimes I'm just really in the mood for them. And I do find that you get quite a lot of translated short stories, so that's something that I quite often enjoy in the translated realm. But I also picked up this one from the library, The Way Spring Arrived and Other Stories. This has not just got female writers in it, but it's got a combination of female and non-binary creators. It's edited and collected by Yu Chen and Regina Canyu Wang, and it's a collection of science fiction from Chinese writers, which really intrigues me. I am just getting into science fiction, and I thought it would be fun to discover some new authors, etc. I also there's a proper chunky book. It's a chunker one, but it's the soft vibe, which I like. And yeah, I thought it'd be a really exciting, interesting read, and I hoped I would find some authors I didn't know that I could then go and read more from. So I'm really looking forward to this one. This one's really intriguing as well. It's another charcoal press title. It's Brenda Lozano's Loop, which is translated by Annie McDermott. And it's about a woman who's recovering from some kind of accident, unspecified accident, and she finds herself in waiting rooms of all kinds, and it's written in kind of vignettes, shorter pieces, and I think it's going to be sort of set in the vibe of that feeling when your health isn't doing so good and you're trying to recover from something and you just feel you're just endlessly waiting for things to get better. Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting, and the way that she's done that I think will be really good. I'm not sure, not always in the mood for vignettes that kind of style, so I'm curious if I will be sometime this month in order to pick this up. I'm such a mid reader, so if I'm not in the mood for something, I'm a bit of a nightmare. I can't force myself to read something. I just have to go with the vibe at the time. I also have Nobody's Home by Dubravka Jurasek, and translated from the Croatian by Ellen Elias Bursak. I read The Age of Skin by this author and loved it, thought it was brilliant, and I'd been wanting to pick up something else from them, and I picked this up second hand. It has got a bit of wear on the pages, you can see, but that doesn't bother me. I'm excited to read the contents of it. I remember really liking the kind of intellectual stimulation that I got from Age of Skin. It was like a lot of talk about migration, culture, American centrism, communism, anti-consumerism. Like, I thought it was really, really like engaging, and I thought she was a really engaging writer. I really loved her writing style, and I think that also says a lot for the translation, and that's one of the reasons I picked up this one specifically, is because it's translated by the same translator, and I love that. Like, I thought her translation was brilliant. Like, I don't read Croatian, so I don't know how like it would be in the original Croatian, but in English it was fantastically translated, so I wanted to pick up and get more into her work. I also wanted to try some titles from Tilted Axis, and one of those I picked up was So Distant From My Life by Monique Ilbudo, and that's translated by Yari Kamari. This one is set in a fictional city, and it's about a guy, it's centred on a guy called Jean Phi, and he's obsessed with migration, basically. And it's about him, he meets a French widower. I don't know if there'll be a love story. It says that he meets an elegant French widower who, for his part, is despairing at the insurmountable bureaucratic hurdles for his charitable endeavour in Jean Phi's country. A window opens to opportunity, but it will also bring tragedy. It's like proper short, so it could be a good one just for like a Saturday, just to sit down and read and enjoy. So hopefully that'll be a good read. And on the topic of short stories, I do have another one in English. This is my last English book. No, not quite. But this one is called Father May Be an Elephant and Mother Only a Small Basket, but ... which is such an interesting title. Like, it's very infrequently you get an ellipsis in the title, so that like immediately is curious for me. Now, this has a whole collection of writers and translators in it, of course. But it says, a young girl is sent away to school to save her from being declared the sexual property of the village's upper caste men. A water tank laments to a passing child. A Brahmin boy is considered polluted by the touch of a Dalit girl, the same action that saved his life. Rendered with idiomatic vitality, humour and lightness, these stories revel in rural childhood without nostalgia or romanticism, forcing the reader to question their expectation of violence in the representation of certain lives. So I like that. It sounds like it's doing something in the world of translation, because I found like a couple of years that when I was looking for translated text, what I was finding most often was a bunch of books that were very, very violent, and I wasn't loving it. I wasn't having like the best time, and I have like consciously searched out a lot of books which are like not centred on trauma, basically. But it is actually a lot harder than you'd think. Like, it's either find a lot of translated crime fiction or a lot of translated like literary trauma centred narratives, which definitely have their place, but it shouldn't be the dominant narrative that gets translated from non-English languages into English. So I'm curious to see what this one's going to do. I think it'll be interesting and hopefully really engaging. Okay, the other ones in English are ones I have already started. I have The Book of Tokyo, a city in short fiction. This is a Comma Press title. They said they were going to send me another one of their books. I think it's Beijing they're going to send me, I think. So if that arrives, I'll also be reading that one in August. Looking forward to that very much. But Tokyo is like one of my dream travel destinations. I would love to go to Tokyo and explore some more of Japan as well. And so while that is just like a pipe dream at the moment, I'm going to live it out through this section of short stories. So it's been good so far. I think I've read about 4 of them, and I'm looking forward to reading more. I've also started Chinatown by Thuang, which is translated by Nguyen and Lee. This is about a single mother who has migrated to France from Vietnam. She was in love with a man who was Vietnamese Chinese, but her family didn't approve, and she had quite a difficult time trying to get accepted in that relationship, and they bore a child together that she now cares for on her own. And it's written in like really just like block of text, like a real block of text, and that's really interesting kind of writing style. It's like a a monologue really of her just thoughts. I quite like it, but I would say it's hard. Like I sometimes just want to be able to like put the book down and go and grab a cup of tea or something, and it's tricky because there isn't really any breaks to be like naturally, okay, I'll set this aside for a moment. Like, so sometimes I find it's harder for me to engage in that, like the shorter paragraphs and shorter chapters maybe keep me a bit more engaged sometimes when I'm reading. But that said, I'm enjoying the writing style, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens if they're reunited, like her and her long lost lover, who we don't know really anything about where he is or anything like that yet, because it's still, for me, very early on. So yeah. I also, when I was back in Scotland, when I was going through the airport, I picked up a journal called O's. It's a multilingual literary journal from Iceland, and it's got a whole range of different writings in it, like different languages. A lot of them are translated to English, but not all. Some are just like in the original language. It's kind of unusual. I've never really seen that before, but it's really interesting as well. Not everyone in this collection, I should say that also about the Book of Tokyo and probably some of the other short story collections as well. Not all of them are solely women, like female writers, but there are some in it, and that's why I'm counted it, you know what I mean? But this says, the journal is an annual publication that covers the current multicultural Icelandic literary landscape by featuring the works of writers and artists from different origins, backgrounds, styles and languages who have a connection to Iceland. In this issue we bring over 60 pieces from 41 authors in 13 languages: Danish, English, Icelandic, Italian, Korean, Lithuanian, Macedonian, Norwegian, Polish, Portuguese, Spanish, Swedish and Swiss German. And breathe. That was, yeah, I liked what I've read so far. I have read a decent chunk of it, and I'll probably just finish it off this month, just like over a coffee here and there. And it's been interesting. I would be curious to read another one if I've spotted one. It's quite pricey, like 3,500 kronas, maybe like £20, probably €20 as well then. So it is like quite expensive, but it's interesting to like get exposed to new writers and stuff like that. I always enjoy that. So now for the Icelandic titles, I have a few here. The first one I just started this morning because I've been thinking to myself, like I often read like Icelandic children's books or like verging on like young adult, but not really, like often children's books just. And I think I would like to like try a novel, but it's just so daunting, like 300 pages in a language that like I'm still learning is like a lot. But I figured to myself, if I just read 10 pages a day for 30 days in August, I'll have read a 300-page book. So I'm started. I've done my 10 pages today, and I'm curious to see if I can keep this up for the rest of August. But the book that I chose to start with is one that I found in the secondhand shop at the weekend. It's called Áður en ég dey, which means like Before I Die, by Jenny Downham. And I read this in English when I was a teenager, so I figured that's also useful because it's like familiar, although it's like quite a distant memory, but it is familiar. It's translated by Isak Harðarson. Basically, it's a young girl who has cancer and she's dying and she wants to do certain things before she dies, and it's like her wish list, and her friend is going to help her with it. And in the first sort of 10 pages, that premise has been set up. Yeah, it's really interesting to read in Icelandic and see how much I do understand or don't. I think it's written in quite simple language, which is really helpful for me. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good challenge. I'm hoping I can keep it up for the full month. It's like, I think it took me quite a long time to read 10 pages, so I'm a bit like, okay, this might be quite a challenge, but maybe some days I can read 20, other days maybe won't be able to read as much, so let's just see how we go. Okay, I also have a book which is, I think, originally written in Polish and then translated to Icelandic. It's called Ísland Poðrað. In English, when it was translated into English, I think they called it Polishing Iceland. It's by an author called Ewa Marcinek, and it's translated by Helga Sofia Einarsdóttir. I started reading this last year as part of an Icelandic class, and I think I read about half of it, but it was like I found it really emotional reading. I think partly because some of her life experiences I've been like I can relate to some of them, and some of them I've like, some of her experiences like here in Iceland specifically are like common, I would say, or at least of what I know of. My experience like trying to speak Icelandic, like learning Icelandic, she talks a lot about like microaggressions and stuff like that, and also like I remember one bit really making me cry where she is like speaking to somebody and they are like being impatient with her, and she has like all this knowledge of like things that she could say, and it's all in her head, but to actually get it to come out of her mouth is like not happening. And that was like, that got me like totally bawling. Like I was like so I'm hoping that I have more of like a stamina to read this time, because it was great and I liked like it was simply written. It was also like quite like poetic in places, very like easy reading. I just really liked it. I would recommend it. I don't know what the English translation is like, but as a challenge myself, I thought I would continue to try it in Icelandic. When I started Before I Die, I was curious if I should start the Sophie Kinsella that I own, Kalpakin i New York, in Icelandic. In English, I think it's like Shopaholic in Manhattan or something like that. And it's just like a Sophie Kinsella book, like you cannot go wrong. I think it's quite easy reading. I picked it up from the little free library at work, and when I picked it up, I thought to myself, this is actually like I read the first 2 pages, I was like, oh, I can actually understand this completely. So I thought like this is going to be a good level. But yeah, it was slightly longer. It was like nearer 400 pages, and I thought, let's just start with like the YA genre more, and then you can move into like adult literature, which is like quite easy reading, and just keep working away at it. So it's good to have options, but I think that one might be one for later in the year. I did set myself a goal this year to read 12 books in Icelandic, and so far I think I've read 4, so I'm a little bit behind given that we're in July going into August, and yeah, I would like to catch up with myself a little bit. I also have Saginaw Tracy Beaker, which is just like the story of Tracy Beaker by Jacqueline Wilson, and this is another one which I thought would be easy if I was like looking for an easy read. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I need to really explain Tracy Beaker. It's a girl who's in care, and she's in foster care with one woman, but she's like always dreaming about her mum and how wonderful her mum is, but she's only in temporary foster care. The rest of the time she's in a care home, and so I think it'll be quite simple language. That's one of the reasons that I bought this like quite a while ago now, maybe a year ago, because it'll be like about her friends and her family, and like sort of a language that you learn quite well in like her day-to-day life, which is always good for me. And then I went to the library because I thought maybe I want some quick wins in Icelandic, maybe give myself a bit of an easier time. So I got Fimm Minuta Friður by Jill Murphy, The Elephant Family, 5 minutes a piece. I thought it would be an easy one just to like read of a morning, or like, you know, a night time or something. And it's like nice illustrations. I always really like reading children's books. Like this is just a really good excuse for me to read children's books like that in Icelandic. It's all been a massive ploy. It's just a way for me to read children's books, really. I love reading children's books. It's so much fun. And I went to the library and the lady was so helpful, like helped me find some books by written like in Icelandic but not written originally in Icelandic. She was very helpful. I also found Julian Havmeyer, which is like Julian is a mermaid. I think this is like LGBT friendly from what I've read about it online, by Jessica Love. Yeah, I don't know how much explanation you want of these, but yeah, everything changed the day that Julian saw 3 women on the train who, I'm not sure, were mermaids. That was the same moment that it came to his mind that he could be himself a mermaid, and what would his grandma think about that. So I think that's quite cute. I think it'll be nice, and again I think the illustrations on this are really nice, really like colourful and vibrant, and it's got quite minimal text actually, which are probably kind of good for just, wow, really minimal text. Okay, I didn't know it had such minimal text. Okay, but I think it'll be a beautiful book and I think I'll enjoy it. And as I say, it's just an excuse for me to read children's books, really. So yes, I'm very excited about my TBR. I've got lots of exciting reads. I'm also looking forward to seeing everybody else's TBR and like everyone's reviews throughout the month and like what everybody's been reading. So if you are taking part in Women in Translation Month, let me know what you're picking out to read. If you have like an extensive list of just like choices like I do, or if you've got like a rigid TBR. And yeah, I look forward to reading with you this month, and thank you so much for watching my video, and I'll see you again next time.